Hi, I'm Jenny with the Charleston Reiki and Wellbeing Center. And I've had a lot of people talk to me lately with a lot of confusion about the channeling work that I do. First of all, channeling is like telepathy. Most people know what telepathy is, even if they don't know a lot of details or they don't really have experience with it. So when you think about having telepathy with another person, that's the same thing as what channeling is. Now, I channel higher beings, such as spirit guides and other higher beings. I also channel people's loved ones who have passed. And that's where a lot of the confusion really comes in the most, I find, in my experience. Because let's say you lost a loved one, mother, grandmother, father, grandfather, or someone else close to you, a close friend perhaps, or another relative, and you're remembering that person, how they interacted with you as a physical being. Now, one thing that's really hard for people to wrap their heads around is that we are so much larger than a physical being. Okay? We are much greater than that. We are huge compared to what we are in these physical bodies. There is a part of our spirit that is constantly outside of ourselves, but when we leave our bodies and we are one with the rest of ourselves, we're huge. Now, even in physical bodies, we always are able to tap into the part of ourselves that's outside of our body, and that's what we often refer to as the higher self. But when I'm channeling, I'm talking to the greater being, the larger self. And so what that really translates into, it doesn't mean that it's a different person. And it doesn't mean that the person doesn't care anymore or that the love never dies. That's always there. And I tell people that all the time. And I know sometimes people are really grasping for some sense, some proof that that person is really there and that they're still loved, that they're forgiven for something that may have transpired. One thing I can tell you is the love is always there. Second thing I can tell you is that they don't hold grudges. If somebody has truly crossed over into the spirit world, they do not hold grudges. There is no, I'm still angry because fill in the blank. I don't care whether it's something small and trivial that happened years ago when you were children, or if it's something as profound as, having betrayed a marriage in some way, having cheated or something huge like that. Forgiveness right across the board, 100%. And I sometimes say they don't care, and I don't mean that they don't care about your feelings or that they don't care about you as a person. What I mean is that all those incidents that took place, it doesn't matter anymore. So none of that matters. All the little day-to-day things from life don't matter. The love remains. The emotions of, positive emotions do remain. The love, the caring, the concern, those things do remain. Another thing that doesn't remain are concerns about even current or past day-to-day activities. That stuff is so insignificant to them. And here's an example I like to use. Okay, so let's say you're driving your car one day and you're going down the road and somebody cuts you off. And even if you're one of these people that have a lot of road rage and you get really, really angry when they cut you off, assuming that, they didn't cause an accident and there was no lasting damage of any kind, a few days later, you might still remember it, but you're probably not going to think so much about it. And then a week later, you might not even think twice about it. And if you do, okay, everybody's different. But think about a decade later. Are you going to remember that one time that you were on that one street that someone cut you off if no accident occurred, nobody got hurt, nothing happened? Most people would say no to that. And it's because it's one of those little things that comes up in our day-to-day that might seem huge in the moment, but in the big picture of our lives, it's not a big deal. Nobody got hurt. Everybody was okay. Now, obviously if there's a major accident and somebody gets hurt, somebody gets killed, then yeah, of course you're not going to forget that. But I'm talking about just, you got cut off, you got annoyed, you got angry, you might have said a few choice words, hollering through the window, you might have given them the finger, whatever. But a decade later, you're not even going to remember that most of the time. If you do, you've got a phenomenal memory because, little things like that happen all the time. And that's a lot what it's like for after you've crossed over and you're in the spirit realm, is that things that might have seemed really important, quote unquote, in the moment, which means like in this lifetime, those things become trivial. And oftentimes they don't remember them at all. And if they do remember them, they just kind of don't really care because they're insignificant. They're completely insignificant. And these beings are looking at something that we're often not able to when we're in physical bodies. So in the physical, day to day, you're concerned about, okay, what am I going to eat? When am I going to get my laundry done? I have to go to work. I've got this going on and that going on. If you have children, you're worried about what your children are doing. All those little things that you're consumed with all these thoughts and worries throughout your day-to-day life. All of that from the spirit end is so small and so trivial because it's not a part of the big picture. It's not. That saying, don't sweat the small stuff? All that is small stuff in the big scheme of things. Now, we're in physical bodies, so yeah, we do have to be focused on the physical right now, and that's, fully understandable. We're only human, except that we're actually spiritual beings having a physical experience, but that's another story. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that I always try to prepare my clients who are having me channel a loved one as best as possible, because sometimes people are expecting them to show up and sound and speak and act the same way they would have during life. And while that is sometimes the case, it's usually not. They're usually a lot more concerned about the bigger picture. They're usually a lot more concerned about your ongoing well-being. The times that I've done channelings for someone who's very recently passed, the family might be planning a service, or it might be just after a service, and they'll be worried like, oh my goodness, was that urn for your cremation remains okay? Or, was the funeral okay? Were you there? Did you like what I said? They don't care. They never care. And it's not that they don't appreciate your efforts, they do, but it's not important to them. If they go to the funeral, it's not because they're concerned with what anybody has to say about them. It's because they're concerned about their loved ones who are grieving, and they want to make sure they're okay. They don't always go to a funeral or memorial service, but if they do, that's the reason why. It's not because they care what you have to say. It's not because they care where they're being buried, if they're being cremated, or if they're, having a certain urn or a certain coffin or whatever. None of that matters to them. I have yet to ever come across anyone who has cared about that. And I've even had them, sometimes crack jokes about that before. I remember one, I can't remember exactly what it was. He said it was a long time ago, but this one really kind of stands out to me because he was making all kinds of jokes towards his parents about, I don't care what you bury me in, how about, and he was spewing off a list of like ridiculous suggestions, like a coffee can or, that kind of thing. Just like trying to be a wise ass, really just trying to be funny. And sometimes they do have a lot of humor. We see personalities shift. Somebody who may have been very reserved in their physical life might have been like kind of tamping down a lot of more lighthearted personality that they didn't let come through. And so that kind of a person who is more serious in life will sometimes, not always, but sometimes after they've left the body, they will appear as almost childlike, very playful, very silly, and Likewise, somebody who was, more playful and silly and, maybe didn't take things very seriously in physical life, afterward might take on more of an air of seriousness. Also, they often will show up how you need them to. So if they feel that it's in your best interest to get some really serious guidance, even some tough love sometimes, that's how they're going to show up. And so a lot of times people think, well, that's not exactly the personality of, Uncle Harry or whoever. That's not necessarily the case because you only had access to this one sliver of that person's personality. And so they are the same person, and usually bits and pieces of the physical personality will shine through, but not always. Now, people have also asked me, well, then how do I know it was really him? How do I know it was really her? And I can't answer that for you 100%. I do the work that I do because I want to help people. I have been through horrible grief myself. I've lost many loved ones, and I know what a painful experience it can be firsthand. I do this kind of work to try to help others, and all I can say is that try to look for the signs, because they do try to show us signs, and just try to have faith. And I know that's a hard thing to do, especially when you're grieving. My God, And if you're a little bit skeptical about this sort of thing, then they're going to try and test you. They are going to be less likely to do a magic show, which is a little, phrase that I like to use sometimes. In other words, first of all, they have limited abilities, and number two, they're not allowed to really interfere with our process too much. We need to experience grief. We need to work through that, and that's part of our processes. And if they interfere too strongly, that's really kind of unethical for them, because then we're not going through the process and we're not getting over it and working out and coming out the other side. And when I say get over it, I mean, of course, the love never goes away. You never stop missing that person if it's somebody that you loved. I don't mean that by get over it, that's sometimes used as a callous phrase. But I mean, we never kind of work through that grief and sort of emerge from the other side of it. And just, a lot of people, if they do feel like all they can do is live for that person, then that's all they're doing, and that's not healthy, and our loved ones don't want that for us.